welcome to our next lesson about U.S. expansion in the 1800s. So we're going to look at how this newly developed country, the United States of America, and these 13 states, over the next 100 years is going to slowly start to expand westward, moving all the way over to then the Pacific Ocean. And in 100 years, expanding from sea to shining sea. Are you ready? Well, let's go. Westward expansion. So we have these 13 states that have just created a new country. They have created their laws, the US Constitution. They have set up their government, seeing there'll be 3 branches of government. There'll be a state, federal, and local level. They are ready to go. And what we see is this mindset that we call manifest destiny. So what do we see in this picture? Manifest destiny. Well, first off, I see a direction that everything is moving to the west. We see all of these cities and developments here on the East Coast, like New York City, and we see everyone moving westward, expanding, looking for new territory, looking for new goods, looking for more wealth. Everyone's moving west. We see the invention of technology in this 100 years. We see steam engines and trains allowing us to move faster and quicker than ever before in history. We see technology like the phone line, electricity. We see covered wagons where people are able to pack up all of their personal belongings and move westward to develop new homesteads, new cities, new towns, always looking for new wealth. We see these groups of people down here looking for gold. They're gold miners. We see farmers establishing new farms. We also see the native population, and at this time they referred to them as the Indians. And we see them also moving westward, but they're kind of getting pushed westward. They're looking back in fear, going, what's going on? And they're getting pushed westward. So we have manifest destiny, this idea of it is our right, it is our duty as Americans to expand and to make this country bigger and better and to be looking for more resources and wealth. So let's have a look. This is a video that shows the expansion of US territory over this 100 years. So let's look at the beginning. At the very beginning, there's the 13 states that then start to expand and make more and more new states that are now east of the Mississippi River. Then in 1803, west of the Mississippi River, we purchased the Louisiana Purchase from France. We get this part up here from UK and Britain. We purchased what is now the state of Florida from Spain at this time. Then there is a conflict here with the United States and Mexico at that time, where we get this section of Texas. We acquire the Oregon Territory up at the top. And finally, after the Mexican-American War, we get all of this territory from Mexico. And then finally, this little section south here of the Rio Grande River. And in 100 years, the United States goes from the Atlantic Ocean all the way over to the Pacific Ocean. And here is a picture of that. The 13 states, how we expanded, Louisiana Purchase from Spain, and then we see that conflict with the state of Mexico. So let's look at who owned what and when. So when we first start off, we have those 13 states. That is now this new country, but there are other countries here involved. France technically owns all of this land here in the middle of the Midwest. The French fur traders had came up through what's nowadays Canada and gone down through the rivers, creating these towns and ports, and traded with the native population and the native tribes here in the Midwest of the United States today. And over here on the far side, we have Spain, where Spain had gone up through South America, Central, Mesoamerica, and all the way up to what is nowadays California and parts of Oregon. All of this territory belonged to Spain, and they developed all of these missions, pueblos, where we had these Spanish-speaking farmers at this time in this territory. So the United States starts to expand. They get more and more states, they create more states, and every time they change the flag to represent the number of states that this country has. Then in 1803, because of economic reasons, the United States purchases all of this territory from France. So at this point, we had Louis XIV, which then shifted to Napoleon, the emperor, that was traveling Europe at this time, having wars with all of these countries in Europe. And war is very expensive. And at this time, France is not doing well economically and is needing a lot of money. So the Americans at this time look at it and say, hey, Napoleon, we will purchase all of this land from you and give you $15 million, which on one hand sounds like a lot of money, $15 million. But if we actually look at it at the price per acre, it was 3 US cents per acre of land. This was the cheapest land deal in US history. And if we look at the map, it is about a third of the US territory if we don't look at Alaska. It is about a third of the continental 48 states of the United States. So a huge land deal at 3 cents an acre. Then we have the Mexican War of Independence. So Mexico, the citizens living in all these pueblos in Mesoamerica, look at what the Americans did and how they had this conflict, this American Revolution, and got their independence from their tyrant king over in Europe. And these citizens of Mexico thought the same thing. They were like, we really don't want a king anymore. We don't want to be a part of King of Spain. We don't want to be part of the Spanish government. We want to create our own independent government and create a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And so they did. And they had a conflict that lasted for 11 years. And eventually they won, getting their independence, creating this new country called Los Estados Unidos de Mexico. The United States of Mexico is this new country that was developed here towards the south of us. Because Spain lost, Spain eventually loses all of its territories. So you think all of them, all of the colonies that they had throughout Central and South America, Spain starts losing one after another, and the United States takes this opportunity and purchases the state of Florida from Spain, making it a part of the United States of America. Now, we see Canada getting its independence as well and becoming its own country. And we have another conflict later in the 1800s called the Mexican-American War, where the United States and this new country of Mexico gets into a conflict in around the area of what is modern-day Texas today. You might have heard of the Alamo, and everyone talks about Remember the Alamo, was this conflict of these this Mexican military force invading the United States territory and starting this war. And so there is this conflict, and the United States government and military wins the Mexican-American War, drawing a new border along the Rio Grande River, saying, all right, we're going to take north of the Rio Grande River, and Mexico you can have south of the Rio Grande River. And so all that territory becomes the United States. And then it stretches all the way over to California as well. And California is really important at this time period because they found gold. And there's this concept called the gold rush, where you see all of these settlers moving to California in search of new riches, because everyone thinks if they could go panhandling in the river, that they can then find gold and become rich and wealthy for their families. So we see a huge amount of people moving to California at this time in search of becoming rich and wealthy. We also see people moving towards Oregon, and there was a trail established called the Oregon Trail, where people would get in their covered wagons, take all of their personal belongings, have their oxen, and were in search of a better life. They were moving westward so they could establish a farm, a ranch, large pieces of land, because again, it was that idea of starting a better life and searching for riches and wealth. Larger land means you could get more cattle, more horses, which means you could make more money and have that better quality of life. And so they were moving westward in the direction of Oregon. Finally, in 1867, the land of Alaska is then acquired by the US government. And so within 100 years, we see the United States government stretching from the Pacific Ocean all the way over to the Atlantic Ocean, creating this concept of from sea to shining sea, one huge country. And what's most impressive about this is really the amount of time that it took. We're talking about 100 years. In 100 years, and in the 1700s, where we don't have planes, we don't have automobiles, we don't have computers or cell phones or technology, we don't have, and without that technology, they were able to expand, to develop, and to build some of these really large, successful cities throughout the United States. So again, here's the order. We have the 13 colonies. We eventually had, that became the states. We had the Louisiana Purchase from France. After Spain left, we acquired this part from England, from the UK, and then when Spain lost its territories, we acquired this part of land from Spain. Now Mexico is a new country, so we have our Mexican-American War, where we acquire this land. We get the territory of Oregon up here at the top, becomes officially part of the United States, and then finally this whole section after the Mexican-American War. And then they had the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, where they drew the official border here, that is the border between the United States and Mexico today. Something to keep in mind with the idea of the Spanish or the Mexican territory, we see how much of that land used to be part of Spain, which then used to be part of Mexico. And if we think about today, where is our largest population of Spanish-speaking residents here in the United States? It is still the Southwest and the Florida area are our largest populations of Spanish speakers, because they were the first developed cities, were Spanish speaking cities, developed by Spain and Mexico. Because if you think about it, in this time period, overnight, that border gets created. And when that border gets created, you have thousands and thousands of people living throughout this area that now have to make a decision. Do you get up and move to your country, which is now way south of California in this desert area, the Chihuahuan Desert? Do you move and leave all of your farms and your families to move to this desert, or do you become US citizens overnight? And so there was this decision that they had to make. Do we just change nationalities and we're now American citizens, or do we pack up everything and move to this really dry desert of northern Mexico? Like I said, history is super fascinating. So we talked about the concept of manifest destiny, this ideology, this thought of it is our duty to expand the United States government. So how did they do it? What technology was developed? First, we talked about the covered wagon, which this allowed people to pack up all of their personal items, their chests, their dresses, pots, pans, their few precious personal items. They could pack it all up and then pull and travel all the way across the Midwest of the United States, heading towards Oregon. We see the invention of the steam engine, which led to trains, which means they can travel faster and quicker and also carry items and supplies by train to other destinations. If we think about industries and factories, how this affects the transportation and the buying and selling of products and goods. Another thing that happens in this time period is the Indian Removal Act, which is worth noting. The president at the time, President Andrew Jackson, created a law that taking the native tribes of the Southeast and pushing them westward to the reservations of Oklahoma. They made it a law where they just had to move. And so this was a very horrible time in American history. It was very devastating for the native population, or the Indians that they called at that time. They forced them out of their homes, forced them out of their communities, and said, oh, this is your land that is given to you in Oklahoma. You have to go to this reservation. And they made them walk, and they kind of pushed them westward. It was a very difficult journey. There wasn't a lot of food or supplies. A lot of people didn't have a lot of time to prepare. They just could barely grab the few items that they had, if that, and then they had to walk. Many people died along the journey, as we can see in this picture here, where they're taking time to bury someone who had passed away. And it was this really devastating, difficult journey for the native population of the United States that the President of the United States mandated that they had to do. The Trail of Tears. What was most devastating was the change in geography. If we look at the southeast of the United States, where these tribes were located, it is in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, or the Appalachian Mountains, depending on how you pronounce them. And in this area, we see mountains and forest and rivers, which is a lot of access to food and hunting. And this is the way they were used to living for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now all of a sudden, they get picked up and dropped in the middle of Oklahoma, which is this dry, arid, flat desert. And when they look at it, they go, where's the food? How are we going to find food? Where's the rivers and the streams and the mountains and the forests? How are we going to live in this new land that we've never lived in before? Again, very devastating for the native population. Another issue we see happening at this United States is this division of the North and the South. We see the North and the South really developing in different ways. Their economy starts developing differently. Their views on certain issues like slavery started developing differently. And this really separates the country into two groups, which eventually leads to a war we call the American Civil War, where the United States was fighting itself, where the South was trying to leave, becoming its own country. We will look at that at a different class. For now, let's look at our GED questions. Here we have a map question of the United States. It is very important to read the titles of maps, because that title is going to give us a hint of what is the main idea of this map. So I see continental United States land acquisition. So I see all these colors, which are those different groups of territories, and I'm thinking about our lesson and going, oh, this is the group of land and who they got the land from and when they got the land. So here we have the Louisiana Purchase, which was from France in 1803. Here we got this territory from Britain in 1818. All right, let's look at our questions. Question number 3. Which statement best describes the map? The map shows Western expansion between 1803 and 1853. The map illustrates the acquisition of territories between 1783 and 1853. The map shows the battles fought for Western expansion. The map shows the sequence of events that led to Western expansion. Well, first I'm going to try to eliminate any answers that I know are not right. Here I feel they're trying to trick me a little bit. On C, they're talking about the battles that were fought, or these sequence of events. I know there were many battles that had happened. We saw the American Revolution, we see the French and American War, we see the Mexican and American War, we see the Mexican War of Independence. There were all these battles, but is that what the map is showing us? The map does not say anything about battles. So I know C can't be correct. Same thing with sequence of events. I know there were many events that led to Western expansion, but that map does not say anything about events. It just lists countries and dates. So I know it is not that. So the main idea of my passage is either going to be A, the map shows Western expansion between 1803 to 1853, or the map illustrates the acquisition of territories between 1783 and 1853. Let's have a look at our map again, shall we? If we look at the dates, The first date I see is 1783. The last date I see is that Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo from 1853. And again, if I go back to my title of my map, I see Continental United States Land Acquisition, where we are acquiring the land. So what is our main idea? If you said the answer is B, you are correct. The answer is B. Next question. Based on information on the map, when was much of the land west of the Mississippi River first opened for settlement? So going back to our map, first we need to find the Mississippi River. Where is the Mississippi River? The Mississippi River is right here. Here's our Mississippi River that the French had gone down. And now we need to figure out, we're trying to go west. What direction is west? West is this direction, to the left. So west of the Mississippi River, what was a large land acquisition west of the Mississippi River? Let's look at our options. We have 1783, the British cession. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase. In 1819, the Spanish. Or 1853, the Gaston Purchase. What was much of the land west of the Mississippi River first opened? The answer is, if you said the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, you are correct. Which nation ceded the least amount of land to the United States? So we want the least amount of land. We have Britain, France, Mexico, or Spain. Let's look at our map again. So the least amount. If I look at Britain, Britain is the green, so we have the original 13 colonies that become the states. We get this little chunk up here, which is North Dakota, and we have the Oregon Territory. That's a pretty substantial amount of territory. Next, if we look at France, we have the Louisiana Purchase, which is about a third of the United States coming from France. If we look at Spain, we have this little territory right here, and we have this little chunk right here, and this little chunk right here, and we have all of Florida coming from Spain. And then if we look at Mexico, for Mexico, we developed all of this territory here, and all of the Texas territory here from Mexico. So which is the least amount of territory that the United States acquired? The least amount of territory. The answer is D. Spain was the least amount of territory. Which of the following states was included in the Mexican cession of 1848? Let's go look. So I'm looking for that 1848. Ah, I see it. It's right here. Right here. 1848. And I try to figure out which state is one of these states here. Let's look at our answers. We have A, Florida, B, Illinois, C, Oklahoma, or D, California. Our answer is D, California. Excellent job. That is where some questions on the GED will give us questions, and they're expecting us to know generally where the different 48 states are located. And so let's review where some of those were. Oklahoma was right here. Oklahoma is in this area where a lot of those reservations were during the Indian Removal Act. We have Illinois here is where Lincoln is from, the Lincoln State, with the city of Chicago being up here by Lake Michigan. We have California here on the west coast. We have Florida here on the east coast. All right, how many years elapsed between the first and the last secessions of British land? So if I look at the first one, and I'm looking for British land, we have 1783, we had 1818, and we had then 1846. So we have 1846 and 1783. How much time elapsed between the first from the last? This is a math question. We're having to do a little bit of math. Our answer is 65 years. If you said 65 years, you are correct. All right, our next question, we have another map. These maps are showing the different trails that people use to travel westward during this time of Western expansion. A lot of people were making all the way up to St. Louis, here up the river, up the Missouri River to St. Louis, and then getting in covered wagons going across the Midwest, heading to Oregon, or some coming down, heading to Salt Lake City and the Mormon Trail, the California Trail going to Sacramento, which is now the capital of California, going all the way down here to Los Angeles, looking for gold on that gold rush. So you have our different trails based on our legend here at the bottom. Let's read our reading that goes along with this map. In the mid-1800s, William Henry Hart traveled the California Trail. He kept a diary of his adventures. Now this is where the GED exam is giving us an authentic text from the 1800s. Now they're not expecting us to understand every single word this person is saying. They're expecting us to read a historical text and to kind of capture the main idea. What is the big picture? What is he talking about here? So let's read. June 22nd, rolled out early. Road very bad, being all hills, steep and rocky, up mountains and down valleys, over or around the rocky ridges, with many a sudden creek to steep pitch. I was driver, and on one of the steepest rocky descents, my lock chain became loosened, and the wagon instantly commenced going down much faster than was proper, and threatened to crowd the team off the side of the road into a deep ravine. In trying to catch the wheel with my hands, I put my foot too near it, and immediately my right great toe underwent a flattening process that was decidedly disagreeable. I was still striving to stop the wagon. However, when I was reinforced by Streeter and Reed, who was not been far off, and by the driver of the succeeding team, by each catching a wheel, we stopped the wagon and relocked it. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the main idea? What is this passage about? Well, our main idea is the idea of covered wagons. These people traveling westward and how difficult that journey was. That this is a time where there aren't roads, there's no highways, there's no development, there's no technology, there's no pit stops, there's no McDonald's drive-through when you get hungry. It is these families living in covered wagons, slowly traversing this difficult land through the Rocky Mountains, trying to get to Oklahoma, or trying to get to Oregon on the Oregon Trail. And in this passage, we see that their wagon starts to roll away from him, and he puts his foot, and the wheel rolls over his foot, which I think is one of my best parts of this reading. I find it really interesting, the words that he uses to describe how he feels about the wagon rolling over his foot. He says, I put my foot too near it, and immediately my right great toe underwent a flattening process that was decidedly disagreeable. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I would have used very different words to describe that situation than disagreeable. Words I will not mention in this video. All right, first question. Based on the passage, Hart encountered these three land formations on the California Trail. 3 land formations. So if we go to our reading, we're looking for land formations. And again, not water formations. We're looking for land formations. So I see hills. I see rocky mountains. And I see valles, which is their way of saying valleys. Creek is not a correct answer in this case because a creek is a water formation. Ravine is questionable. I think ravine could be a land formation, but it might be a water formation as well too. But our correct answer is hills, mountains, and valleys are our 3 land formations. Number 4, based on the map, the California Trail intersects the trail. So looking at our map, we're looking for the California Trail. If I look at my legend down here at the bottom, it tells me the California Trail is that dotted black line. So I see it, the dotted black line, and even here on the map, it says California Trail. And I'm trying to figure out what map, what trail does it intersect with, does it cross with? And I see it crosses with this red dotted line. The red dotted line is the Oregon Trail, and I see it written on there too, Oregon Trail. So make sure we use our legend to really match up that information. So it intersects with the Oregon Trail. So we put as our correct answer. And number 5, based on the passage, Hart faces a situation that is dangerous for settlers on the westward trails, losing control of his covered wagon. And that is our lesson over westward expansion. How the United States, this new country over 100 years, expands from being 13 states along the East Coast and going all the way over to the Pacific Ocean, creating the United States of America as we know it today in 100 years. Thank you for coming, and I will see you next time.